Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, our first one for September. This is Belinda Doveston speaking, and welcome to each and every one of you making a bit of time out from your day to come and connect with us and learn more about today's topic, which is all about activating employee engagement. I trust that the process today is going to be exciting and interesting, going to provide you with context and a reference point to not only understand engagement in another way or another level, but also to understand how we can work collectively to maximize our contribution and return. As the co-founder of Contribution Compass, it gives me great pleasure to share with you this facet of the Contribution Compass being employee engagement. It certainly is an aspect of talent development, of the issues facing leaders at this time that is absolutely critical. In some ways, it's become the new buzzword of leadership and developing human talent. And so I'll share with you some of the science behind some of the thinking around employee engagement and talk about what does this mean for us in our organizations, as practitioners, as human resource professionals, as business leaders. How can we apply some of this thinking on employee engagement into our companies? And of course, we always say that it's about maximizing contribution, but then also focusing on maximizing return. This aspect of team development and leadership has been such an important part that we have in our development of our facilitators and our partners focus specifically on providing support and insight on how to lift and work with employee engagement. It is absolutely critical and is a wonderful way of reaching out and connecting with organizations who are looking to lift the game and do more than ever before. So what I want to do is start by talking about some frightening, shocking statistics. And the thing that perhaps even is more frightening than the numbers you're seeing in front of you is that the numbers really haven't changed. These numbers come from a 2011 Blessing White survey and a 2011-2012 Gallup survey. The sad reality is that engagement pretty much hasn't shifted by any degree of significance since these surveys were done. The 2016 Gallup survey is out and is starting to provide some insight into some of the key areas. Perhaps there's new things that we're learning, but also that really things haven't really changed. Quite sad indeed. So what these shocking numbers share with us is that in Blessing White, when they did a survey in 2011, and this is a Europe survey, they found that 3 out of 10 workers were engaged, only 30% of the workforce. From the Gallup point of view, pretty much the same. And you'll find that in the latest Gallup research, they talk about the highly engaged group being really only 1 in 10, even worse. Gallup tried to quantify what does this mean? What is the financial impact of this disengagement, of this very low engagement result? And they worked out that disengagement, and we talk about actively disengaged employees, those ones that are on a mission to make life miserable for everybody else, and we've all met them. These actively disengaged employees cost the US economy between $450 and $550 billion per annum. Whenever I share this number, I think to myself, if we had to take that block of money, we can't even perceive it, take that block of money and take that and invest that into social causes and to social upliftment, what on earth could we do? Amazing things. So the value of 450 to 550 billion of potential written off due to actively disengaged employees. Really quite a shocking number. And then looking at another source of engagement information, this is a report from Aon Hewitt, a 2015 report on trends in global employee engagement, and they start to look at a more of a granular level across different regions, looking for different layers of understanding of what engagement means. So I know there's lots of numbers on your screen, but what I want to show you is focus on the green blocks. So the green blocks are the highly engaged groups, and I'm sure that Gallup would disagree that it's not as high as these numbers indicate, but typically according to this Aon Hewitt report, 23% in 2014 were highly engaged globally, and there you can see that it differentiates across the different regions. North America 27%, Europe down to 19%, Asia Pacific at 23%, Latin America quite high, 32%, and Africa and Middle East surprisingly, at 30%. So these start to show us that things are different across the world. They're not one size fits all in terms of insights on what this 3 out of 10 really means. If we look even more detail, and I promise you I won't spend too much time on stats, but if we look at a lower level of detail, here is the graph from the same Aon Hewitt research that says, what is the Africa Middle East trend? So what they've done is when they did the research, they lumped together Sub-Saharan Africa, the MENA region, and the AME region all together. And when you look at that, you see that actually the results for that segment are distorted by very high engagement in the MENA region and only 61% in the Sub-Saharan Africa region. So what's important to understand is that the different regions are different. There are different themes, there are different cultural issues at play. We can't just take one generic engagement number and say, well, that's it. We have to unpack it and have a little bit more information behind it. What's also interesting about the Aon Hewitt research into employee engagement is the reasons why engagement differs. And what you're looking at now is an extract of one of the reports that shows what are the top 5 most important engagement priorities for these different regions. What's amazing to see, there's one thing in common, and Kevin says something in common. The one thing in common across all these areas is the number one driver of engagement are career opportunities. You know, we often think and lured into this idea that it's what you pay someone that's the issue. It's the career opportunities that is overriding the number one issue in every single region. And then you see things start to differentiate when you look at positions 2 down to 5. You see things like the organization's reputation, pay isn't there, but between 3 and 5, so not as high as we all might think. There's a brand alignment question, there's innovation, how we manage performance, and then recognition is also on the list. So we also have to understand that the different regions and the different sub-regions will have different things, different cultural drivers that impact what engagement really means. And I think it's really critical to understand these lower levels of detail to realize that we can't just take, you know, one broad brushstroke and apply it to everything. We have to be in tune with what is happening in the markets that we work with. Next, I want to share with you a wonderful way of thinking about employee engagement. So, you know, let's put aside the horrible numbers and say, okay, it's really bad. And it's really bad, and it has a huge financial impact. That's kind of the key gist of what those numbers are showing us. And the third thing is that there are regional differences that we have to pay attention to. We can't apply one size fits all to the employee engagement conversation. So what you're looking at next is a model put together by Blessing White and their research, the employee engagement model. And it maps onto this model 2 perspectives. We've got the kind of the yellow stripe or the yellow perspective, which is the organization and its success. And we have the red stripe, which is the individual, or the arrow, the individual and the person's own individual success. And what we want to do is we want to maximize contribution to the company and maximize satisfaction to the individual, and create a place where those 2 things meet and are maximized at the same time. And what I love about this model is it really starts to unpack some of the personalities you find in the engagement drama that plays out. And I wanted to just work through them, because as we go through them, there will be you know, personalities you'll recognize. People perhaps in your own team, clients that you've worked with, you'll start to recognize the names and faces of disengagement and hopefully engagement. So right at the top where the 2 intersect, maximum satisfaction, maximum contribution, is what we call the engaged group. These are the ones that on most mornings jump out of bed, are excited, will do what it takes, are personally and emotionally committed and involved in what they're doing. They're high contributors. They deliver a lot of value to the organization, and they feel happy and satisfied about their ability to do that. Just below them is the little orange triangle. This is the group that's about to become engaged, and these are a very important group because it doesn't take much to take the almost engaged into the engaged category. We want to try and move everyone into the engaged category or move them out the organization altogether. So the almost engaged is really about how, as an organization, as leaders, do we shift those that are kind of there most of the time but are needing a little bit more love and care and support or career development to allow them to be and remain in the engaged category. On the left-hand side, we have the honeymooners and the hamsters. This is a group that is satisfied but is not a maximum contributor. Okay. The honeymooners are your new people who arrive in the organization. And it's kind of like the magpie scenario of everything's exciting. Oh, we've got a coffee machine on our floor. Yay! Everything's exciting. Everything's new. Everything's great. There's still a gloss on everything. They haven't had time to really get into the underbelly of what's happening in the organization, the subtleties, the culture, the deeper issues that are playing out that they discover in due course. So the honeymooners are not yet contributing, but are very happy to be where they are. And the hamsters, you think, why on earth is a hamster feeling satisfied? And a hamster is an individual who doesn't want change. They want to be in the wheel, and they're quite happy to be in the wheel, but to not have to deal with things that are new. So your hamsters are the ones that just want to work hard, and no matter how hard they work and how much they might complain about working hard, they don't want to make the change to not work hard and to work smarter and be more effective and happy and grow and push themselves to new levels. And so the hamsters are a challenge, because how do you support them to maximize their contribution and get off the hamster wheel and now be an active participant and not be the hard worker that sweats and cries foul, but actually is trapped in the wheel. On the other side to the right of this diagram, we have the crash and burners. These are people that are high contributors. They bring in a lot of value into the organization, but they are very unhappy. And typically these are your stars, or your former stars, or your fading stars, who were high performers and are just literally burnt out. They've worked too hard, too long. They're carrying too much weight in the team, and they're kind of on the edge of crashing out completely. And these are quite a dangerous group, because these are the ones that bring in the cash. And typically you'll see this in an organization where you have your lead or your expert salesperson who is like brings home, all the trophies and all the top accolades and returns, but is just absolutely shattered all the time and actually is really negative. So the crash and burners are that group. And then of course the bottom are the disengaged that are actually not going to change. They're just there to get the salary. And you as an organization, as if you're a leader or you're part of a team to help improve a company, is so how do we move these on and remove them from the organization in the right way. Okay, so it's a very powerful model of just trying to put together this picture of these different personalities, these different aspects and facets of engagement, and really such a simple diagram that really helps to understand this process of trying to maximize the contribution of the organization and maximize the personal satisfaction that goes with it. So one of the things that then came out of the Gallup survey was, what is the real performance impact of engagement? It's all great to talk about employee engagement as a concept, as a principle. What might be the financial and the organizational performance impact of investing time and energy in activating employee engagement? So the same 2011-12 Gallup survey looked at companies, and they said companies with a 9.3 to 1, so that's 9.3 engaged team members to 1 actively disengaged team member. So now you have literally 1 to 10, let's call it 1 to 10, 1 disengaged person, actively, the person who's negative and causes trouble, versus 10 who are engaged. Those companies had a earnings per share that was 147% higher when compared to the competition. That's a massive financial impact on earnings per share, tangible difference. When they compared the top performing engagement organizations to the bottom performing, the top quartile compared to the bottom quartile, they found that across a number of key areas, there were dramatic differences in performance. So the top quartile had 22% greater profitability, 21% greater productivity, 41% less quality defects, and 49% less safety incidents. Why? Because people care. They care about what they're doing. They're paying attention. They're in their role. They're not thinking about something else and living in some other world, parallel universe. They are there. And absenteeism, 37% down. If you had to take your organization and plug these numbers in, what might you find as the end calculation that spits out? What might be the financial impact of just incrementally improving the engagement in your organization? The other thing that Gallup found, and I'll share some new data with you in the next slide, is that managers who build strengths can almost eliminate active disengagement and double the level of engagement of their employees. So the secret out of this disengagement epidemic is building strengths and focusing on strengths. And then the magic number, which is when you have engaged customers and engaged employees, and of course it doesn't mean just because you've got engaged employees that you haven't got engaged customers, but if you do have both, there is a 240% increase in performance outcomes. So this is not an airy-fairy thing. This is a specific, tangible financial impact of addressing the issue of employee engagement and finding ways of learning how to improve the employee engagement results. So what Gallup has done recently in their 2016 research is they have published some really interesting information on the most recent research paper related to understanding companies who manage strengths. So if managing strengths is what they learned in 2011, 2012 as the way out, or the way up, as it were, they've now done some more specific research around managing strengths. So the 2016 research they did, they looked at 49,495 business units, which culminates in 1.2 million employees, 22 organizations, 7 industries, and 45 countries. So if I had to summarize that bullet into one line, it was extensive. Okay. So when we talk about numbers and we talk about insights, this is multi-country, multi-society, massive amount of people giving us the results that we're looking at next. What they looked at is they measured 6 performance outcomes, very similar to the outcomes we looked at the previous slide: sales, profit, customer engagement, turnover, which is employee turnover, employee engagement, and safety. So they measured those varieties of outcomes. And they found that when there were strengths-focused interventions, that the organizations experienced improvement on all measurements in that case. So where there are groups that had strengths-focused interventions, improvement on all 6 measures. Overall, the key number, engaged employees, the number of engaged employees with a manager who focused on strengths, 67%. So in a case where a manager focuses on strengths, 67% are engaged. Okay, so there's a direct correlation between strengths and engagement. Specifically, what they found is that 90% of all the groups they surveyed had the following results: between 10 and 19% increased sales, 14 to 29% increased profit, 3 to 7% higher customer engagement. For companies that had low employee turnover to start with, a 6 to 16% even lower turnover. For companies that had a high turnover prior to assessment, 26 to 72% lower employee turnover. Then 9 to 15% increase in engaged employees and 22 to 59% fewer safety incidents. These numbers are hectic. They really indicate that there's a financial imperative for us to, and a performance impact of us focusing on driving and improving engagement. So the key question we have to ask ourselves is, what would widespread active engagement mean for your company, for our company? And if we were to put all our companies together, what would it mean for an economy? Think about those numbers we started off with, thinking about the different regions, thinking about our poor history of engagement in Africa compared to Latin America. What are they doing different? Why are they having a high percentage of engagement? What could we do through our companies to drive the engagement of our economy? Because we know that if we drive engagement, we drive performance impact. So I'd like to next share with you a little bit around the contribution compass itself. The contribution compass is focused on exactly that, contribution. And it says that in the workplace, we all have a special gift. We have strengths. In the past, the old school way of dealing and managing with people was to, send you on courses for finances for non-financial managers if numbers weren't your thing, or send you on a people course or a networking course if you didn't like going to networking events. That's the kind of thing that we would do. And in my career, I've seen us do that with our teams, where you try and solve the problem that's missing and try and fill that hole. The contribution compass says that each one of us has our own special gift that we're here to provide. We have our own special natural energy, and our task is not to try and fill up the hole, but to literally, bolster up our awesomeness in the thing that we are naturally able to do, and to build teams and manage teams of people in a way that harnesses and accelerates the natural energy of that team. It really goes on this idea that there are 4 types of natural energy, and a natural energy is really, it is an idea of what is it that you do in a workplace, in your contribution, in teams, in your career, that firstly feels like fun, secondly is just easy to do, and thirdly is a path of growth and development. And so instead of plowing away at those development areas, there are some things that we have to do to nurture and grow and develop as people, but it's actually to focus on developing the thing that we're naturally gifted at doing, the thing that we do without even thinking. When we're under pressure, we have to make a decision, call this a critical moment. In a critical moment, how do you react and respond under pressure? And wouldn't it be amazing that you could be in a position where the way that you naturally respond under pressure is the way you create value for your position? And it's aligning those 2 things and thinking about contribution, and through contribution we create return. Personally, for the individual, through increased opportunities and through increased remuneration, it should be, and second for the organization, because when your employee is now engaged, is delivering, and is contributing and creating a return. There are 4 types of natural energy. There's activating energy, which is all about accelerating, igniting change. This is the go, go, go energy. We have the inspiring energy, which is warm like a fire. It kindles the growth in others. It nurtures and accelerates growth and drives performance and accountability. We have sustaining natural energy, which is all about the ground, the earth, holding other people's ideas, nourishing and supporting the ideas of others, very much focused on routine and rhythm, momentum, and supporting. And then we have the tempering energy, which refines the organization and the business units through precision, analysis, refinement, tinkering away at the engine, improving the way the organization works, and as we say, sharpening the organizational sword. And those 4 natural energies combine to form the 8 profiles of the contribution compass. When you complete your profiler, your online profiler, you'll be asked a variety of work context questions that are all designed to help unlock and understand where your contribution really lies, your natural energy, where does it really sit? And once the report is done, it gives you a breakdown across the 4 percentages, the 4 types of natural energy, what your unique profile is, and provides what your end result is. What of the 8 profiles are you? Now, what's really interesting about this process is that we always say, you'll hear us talk about this over and over, that our task is not to put each other into boxes, okay? And this, any kind of profile tool, the risk is, I'm a this, and I'm in a box, and this is all I am. So what I want to share with you is the way to think about this idea of natural energy is that, say, for example, you are a catalyst profile. There are other things in life we have to do. If you're starting up a business and you're a catalyst, someone's got to make the tea and someone's got to do the accounting. So, in teams, when you work with each other, there are things that we have to do that aren't always in our natural flow. We do them. But at the end of the day, our catalyst energy is the energy that's going to accelerate us the fastest. It's the sweet spot. It's the sweet spot that if we keep on pushing at that sweet spot and keep on developing in a particular area, we accelerate our contribution the fastest. Not that we can't do the other things, but the other things are not the fastest pathway to that contribution. And it's very important for us to think about any kind of profiling tool of not being about in a box, but about a reference point, a guide to help us accelerate our growth. So if you are a catalyst, It's like that idea of Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours, that if you keep on putting your effort in developing in a particular direction, you're going to accelerate your ability to generate return from that. It's the same idea. If you know you're a catalyst, doesn't mean you don't have to do other things that are outside your flow, but if you focus on being the best catalyst you can be, you can activate massive opportunity and flow within your life. So I promised that we'd be talking today about activating employee engagement, and we've taken a broad brushstroke view of some of the harsh numbers that come out, that the hard reality of employee disengagement. We've looked at some of the drivers, understanding managing to strengths. We've looked at some of the performance impact numbers of what happens if we do manage our strengths. Looked at those. We've kind of touched on what is natural energy and how the contribution compass plays off. And now I want to take this into the practical application part, because one of the things that for me is really important, and for our team is really important, is that it's great to have a profile, have done a psychometric test, whatever label you want to call it, and that you've got to understand what you are. No matter which tool you've used, and you know, I personally have tried a whole variety, because you know that's been part of my journey of learning, and I'm sure you too have as well. And what tends to happen is we do the profile, we know what our profile is, and it's, oh, that's interesting. Maybe we read through the report, and then the report goes into a file, and that's where it ends. Or it goes into the bin, I don't know, it depends what you do with your reports. And so one of the things that's really important is, it's great having done your profile, but it's what you do with it that counts, because that's how you switch on value, is taking what you understand about your natural energy and translating that into action. And likewise, if you're a team leader and you're thinking about, how do I accelerate the engagement of my employees, how to accelerate the contribution of my team, just getting your team to do their profiles is great. Hopefully they remember their name of their profile in 5 years' time. But what's important is how you translate what you now know about your team into action right here, right now. So it's all about application. And what I'd like you to do is think about the talent journey within your organizations, within your clients, and bear in mind that what we have to do is we have to see people as an end-to-end system or a process. It's not about understanding, just getting them into the company, and then there's a blank hole as to what happens to them afterwards. So in our view, the talent journey has 5 key steps. The first step is planning for talent, planning what it is that you need, who do you need. Okay. The second part is then sourcing and understanding, you know, where these people are. The third is selecting the right team members, then onboarding, and then the ongoing performance enhancing activities of the organization. Note, I don't say performance managing, because that has this word of, we're managing it to a container. You know, we're managing it to make sure it meets a standard. How about performance enhancing our team? And our view is that any profiling tool, and we're obviously talking about contribution compass today, but any profiling tool, if it's valuable, should be used throughout the process from end to end. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just over the next few minutes take you through a couple of key ways that we can unlock value of your tool as you go through it. And each of these steps is all about activating employee engagement. Okay, the planning stage, understanding what it is that you need. Sourcing stage, looking for the right people. Selecting, matching, onboarding, how you bring that person in, and performance enhancing, the ongoing development of the organization. There's obviously a lot around this employee engagement conversation that's not on these 5 steps. There's a whole process of, you know, the organization's culture and whether or not the organization develops managers effectively. Not everyone should be a manager. We often find, you know, some of the research shows that 1 out of every 2 people leaves the organization because of the manager. That's terrible. So, you know, there's lots of other facets of this employee engagement conversation. We're looking at a particular flow related thereto. So the first step is the planning step. And the planning step is often a step we see is missing in a company's drive to recruit and get someone now. So often what happens is there's this drive to fill a position or get someone into the team immediately, and the planning process gets missed altogether. And what we say in the planning process is that you have to look and do quite a little bit of reflection around the particular position that you're wanting to fill, and really understanding how that position creates value for your organization. And so the planning stage is important. It's about saying, what is it that we really need? What is the value contribution that we really need the most in this position? And then understanding how to write your position descriptions related to that role. So this is an extract from our facilitated program. We look at a case of a customer service manager where the person provides a tailor-made service for its clients in a B2B environment. And the critical success factor for the business is the level of customer service provided to a range of customers in a dynamic way with a variety of services. And you're looking to recruit a customer service manager who will manage the team who values relationships and getting it right first time. So what you need to do in the planning phase is understand the path of value being created with enough depth that you can articulate that this position is a coach role. It's one of the 8 profiles. This is a coach role. We need someone who can handle variety, which is a coach, who can understand relationships, who can drive performance out of a team, who likes doing a dynamic variety of different things. If this was a different type of value creation process, maybe go for a custodian. But it's understanding the value contribution of this particular role. And understanding not just what the role needs, but also understanding the team that you already have. So you'll see on your screens a picture of the 4 natural energy diagram with some bodies around it. And imagine we're looking down on a boardroom table or your team meeting table, and each of these bodies represents a particular profile in your team. So in this particular team, this is actually a real team. There's a catalyst at the top, there's a champion, there are 3 coaches, and there is a connector. And you can see immediately that one of the challenges that you've got in this team, and what you have to take into account in the planning phase, as much as you want to put another coach into this team, the other problem you've got is you've really got a whole pile of coaches. So if this was a leadership team that you were busy building, and you're putting this customer service manager into a leadership team, you're going to create and perpetuate the imbalance that exists at a leadership level. So we talk about one of the application techniques is this idea of balancing the team. Understanding that at a leadership level, a management level, a team leader level, your team needs to be as balanced as possible, because your team are making decisions and should be looking at each decision from as many different angles. Okay, so the planning is 2 aspects. One is understanding the value contribution of a particular role and really unpacking the value of that. And the second part is then understanding how to plan for where might the gaps and the holes be in the natural energy of your team. So you can imagine in a team where you have this kind of imbalance, some members of this team will feel compelled to move to the other side of the contribution compass wheel, and now want to have to balance out the imbalance in this team by being out of their flow. We've seen this recently in a board assessment we did, where there were very, very high imbalance on one side of the diagram, and so the 2 non-executive directors felt compelled to act out the tempering energy that was missing. And what they found is that after every meeting they were totally exhausted, because they spent the entire board meeting out of their zone of flow in a completely opposite energy. And so that, over time, if this was a scenario where it was a full-time executive team, you'll find those people who felt they're compelled to move across because of the imbalance over time will become more and more disengaged, more frustrated, and more exhausted, and not able to actually be who they really should be in this context. Okay, so that's the planning element. The next element is then looking at sourcing your employees, looking at how we find them. And one of the things we talk about when we look at sourcing employees is that what we tend to do is we tend to do 2 things. When we write a position description or we write an ad for a new position we put into LinkedIn or wherever we put it, there's 2 things we're doing. One is we write the ad in language that's aligned to our own natural energy, okay? Or we write the ad and put in all 4 natural energies to cover off all bases. So I'll give you an example. If you're a catalyst and you write a position description or an ad, you're going to be using catalyst language like exciting, new, dynamic, fast-changing, intense, you know. You'll be using words that resonate, words that make sense to you, things that make you excited because that's your natural language. But if the position is actually calling for a custodian who wants process, rhythm, routine, security, those are going to be words that completely turn them off. And so you'll find you'll get loads of catalysts replying to your ad, very few custodians, which is the one you want. So we work with this other application technique, which is aligning the position and the profile language for your job description, for your ads, that they are language specific to the profile. Okay. So really thinking about understanding how we use language. I've recently looked at a position description that one of our partners sent through where the position description or the ad said you must be innovative and dynamic and fast-paced. You must have a natural talent of building and inspiring people. You must follow organizational processes, and you must have financial analysis ability. And so what's in this position, actually, there's no side that's been picked. Every single aspect of the whole compass is required as a key important value, which of course we know is impossible. We can't get people who are talented at all 4 dimensions all at the same time. So a challenge for you is to use learning styles, use the different natural energies in how you describe the position and in how you present that information to the world. If you're looking for a coach, for example, why not, instead of having a detailed written description with lots of detailed reports that a coach would never read, is use an interview or an ad of your MD talking about the role on a YouTube video, because coaches are audio and visual. So what I'm saying is that we have to think about not just writing in, coach style language for the ad, but using coach style learning styles, particularly the verbal method, to reach and excite them by other means, things that are aligned. So it's really thinking about communication in a whole new way. As I said, beware of the trap of expecting a candidate to be all things to all people, and dramatically improve the profile fit in the shortlist stage. This will really, if you are writing and gearing all your materials towards the right profile, you will save yourself so much time and effort in the shortlist phase, because everyone on your list will be very close to the natural energy you require, rather than being a collection of complete opposites. How does this tie to engagement? What you're doing is that you're reducing the risk that fundamentally someone is going to come into an organization that's firstly going to be the wrong person in a particular position, and second of all, that the process helps to make sure that we get those people who are aligned, who understand themselves and can reflect. And so one of the things I'll share with you a little bit later is how you can actually use the profile in the shortlist phase to do that. Okay. Then when you go and you select, now in the selecting phase, we're looking at what's very important is to realize, of course, that besides profile, besides all that stuff that we might do in the selection phase, the most overriding important criteria you need to use, and this is directly related to engagement, is values, values, values. If you get someone come into your organization where there's a conflict of values with your organization, doesn't mean they're wrong, it's just different, we have an employee engagement issue. So that is my disclaimer, that nothing can surpass being clear on the values and hiring for values first. And really recommend that you go and have a look at the work that Zappos.com has done in this area. They're an organization that's become so good at organizational values, they now teach other companies how to do it. So values, values, values is really important. Interviewers, and particularly through our facilitator training, can learn to detect natural energy in conversation and interview process. So you can start to hear the type of language that a coach would use. We start to pick up on the nuances of contribution. And what's really, really interesting is that one of our recent facilitators commented that, you know, a case study they were doing, the person that didn't like their profile, didn't like the profile that they got. They said, that's not me. And the person who was working with them could definitely see that it was them. And how easy it is for, if we aren't trained to look for contribution in the CV and the interview process, we can miss the fact that the personality looks all, you know, bright and fluffy and friendly, but actually the person is, in this case, was a conductor, which is all about precision and analysis and attention to detail of numbers, which might be out of sync with the profile. And that person will never be satisfied being in a position where they're outside their zone of flow. We really encourage you to think about adapting your interview templates for natural energy as a way of focusing and building that culture of understanding natural energy into your interview process. And then only do your profiles on the contribution compass for your shortlist. You should have enough expertise in your interview process to start sorting and looking at the CV and looking at history to start working out where someone's at, and then do your profiles in the shortlist phase to really understand the pros and cons given the natural energy. You might find in cases you have a person that's one profile off, you've got to make a decision on that. But of course, from a legal point of view, you can't you know, hire based on profile alone. It's to provide insight into the person. As I mentioned earlier, one of the processes that you can use is to use the profiler to gauge self-awareness in the final stages. So in employee engagement, if we have a team that is self-aware, that understands our drivers, we have goals that we're working towards, as an organization, if we're structurally supportive, we can provide employees with great opportunities for that career development that was coming up as the #1 criteria for drivers of employee engagement. And so what I like to do is I like to, in the final stage of the interview, after the candidate has done their profiler, is to ask them to reflect back and say, well, you tell me, was this, you know, what did you learn about yourself through the profile? What can you relate to? And those that can just easily talk about examples in their own lives where they could see it resonating, where they learned lessons, where they were in their flow, where they were out their flow, you immediately get a sense the person's self-aware and can look at that piece of feedback and interpret it in a positive way. And that can only help you in employee engagement when you have highly self-aware people who are working together in a productive way. Of course, we know this, that just because you're a particular profile doesn't mean that you've matured that profile. And so as much as it's about understanding, you know, aligning a profile to a position, it's also about understanding profile maturity. So someone might be a champion and you're like all excited, that's exactly what I was looking for, but they're an immature champion, which probably would look like, I put me first, it's all about how I look, it's all about appearances and reputation, but actual real value contribution through brand and through a message I take to the market is not that activated. So when we have a profile that's not mature, that doesn't necessarily mean it's the right thing to do to have that champion in your team. Then the onboarding process, and really what we're trying to do is build up a picture of how just in the pipeline of talent moving into your organization, how you can start to think differently around the different steps to play off to create engagement. Now, onboarding is a process that we tend to talk about as being important, and it is critically important, yet we try and rush because we're trying to get that person valuable and value contributing quickly as possible. And we often, and I've been as guilty as anybody else, and perhaps you all have, of trying to accelerate that process so fast that we don't create value for that person as we go along. So the onboarding phase is a wonderful opportunity to you know, take the honeymooners, as we spoke about earlier, and gear the honeymooners in a process of getting them into the organization and turn them into active, engaged team members as quickly as possible. And so taking the coach example, if you were using a profile-aligned approach, you would say, I've got a coach that's coming into my team. I know that last time I had a conductor that came into my team, I gave that person detailed reports and the policy file. I'm not going to do that with the coach because the coach is going to just glaze over. They want to be able to have FaceTime with each key team member. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tweak aspects of the onboarding process to be profile aligned, to maximize the value of the onboarding process, and to make the employee feel engaged from day one. So FaceTime with each key team member, discussion and audio content as being the key drivers of the onboarding process. So now you can start to see how this plays off. Next time you get a sustaining type, they're like learning by doing, your onboarding process is tweaked for the learning by doing process. And lastly, our performance enhancing, which is the ongoing process of how we support the development of our team. And of course, from those numbers that career development is the #1 driver of employee engagement. So this is really where the rubber hits the road. One of the things I'd like you to think about is that what we have to do is we have to obviously focus on putting the right people of the right profiles into the right positions. So naturally there's an alignment and the ability to be your best strength at all times. But what we also can think about is how do we reward people for their development? What we should be doing is having key performance indicators and measures of success that are aligned to that person's natural energy. What we tend to do is we tend to have measures that are standard for the entire organization, so they're standard set or entire business unit, that doesn't take into account the person's natural energy. And surely it makes sense to reward someone and to incentivize their performance based on measures that are aligned to natural energy. Taking the coach example one step further, perhaps the measure is the quality of the relationships established internally and externally, or the performance of the team. And so this process is really about thinking about how do we accelerate and activate our employee engagement, because we're thinking about strengths and we're applying strengths, a strengths mindset in every step of the relationship with a new team member. We're not just talking about strengths and just doing a profile. We're also embedding the way we use strengths and focus on strengths throughout the entire organization. There are certainly many other organizational processes, not on the side, that could do with a strength-based process that is integrative and is focusing on maximizing contribution and natural energy. Yet this might just be one of the key ways we can focus on some of the pain areas we face, getting people who are naturally aligned to our values, to our organization, but more importantly, that the job that they do every day is aligned to what they love doing and are naturally gifted at doing. And that will take us very far in the journey of activating employee engagement. So that was my little story on activating employee engagement. I hope there was information there was meaningful and interesting to you. There will be a time, if you'd like to, you can pop some questions. There's two ways that you can do that. One is to click on the questions box and write me a written question if you'd like to, or a comment. You're more than welcome. And the second option is there's a little hand icon which you can click on if you'd like to make a comment or ask a question from the group. You're more than welcome to do that. And so while you think about questions, if you have any or any comments you'd like to make from today's session, I'd like to just tell you a little bit about some of the things that we're doing. At Contribution Compass, the way we approach the market is that we focus on building our partners. We have a network of partners that are either in the process of doing their facilitator training or have completed their facilitator training. We have a diversity of partners from head of HRs to incubating companies, to accelerator organizations, to entrepreneur development people, to coaches and mentors, such a wide variety of organizations who are focused on developing people and unlocking talent. And so if you haven't yet done your profile, I really encourage you to contact us and find out how to do that with us. If you want to, we can also put you in touch with a partner who can do a debrief with you. And one of the things that our clients really love is having a team assessment done, where say you've got 5 people on your team, you have your team to do their profile, and there's a team assessment where one of our partners goes and looks at the natural energy of each of your teams, looks at the position they hold in your executive team or your whatever type of team you've got, and provides specific guidance on the personality of your team and the challenges of the team and the opportunities of how to bring greater balance into your team. So that might be one aspect, and perhaps you're interested in joining our partner program, and we encourage you to get in touch and find out how to do that. The partner program commences with signing up as a partner. There's no cost to signing up as an approved distributor, and you then also have the choice of attending our facilitator program, which starts in October, is our next one, at the end of October. And so encourage you to think about, is this of value? Is this tool something that you could work with? Remembering that the tool is one thing, but what's also important are all the application techniques that come with it. Very low upfront investment in becoming a partner, but a high return as you go. And the facilitator program we run is an incremental learning approach that uses the idea of incremental steps of applied learning. I've been on so many courses where I sit in a classroom for 3 or 4 days straight, and it's as exciting as that is, I leave the class and I realize that I've only just now got to start learning, because that was just the warm-up. And what we do is we take small steps using, powerful online platforms to drive deep learning on the Contribution Compass and how to facilitate that learning, either as a coach or consultant or as a facilitator with a group, and really to internalize that. We have an international team. Every single session we've had, group we've had this far, we've had an international person join us, and of course ongoing development as part of our engaged community. So on that note, if you are keen to join us or keen to work with us, I'd like you, just as our last step, is I'm going to load a poll on to the screen, and I encourage you to fill out or click on an option which applies to you. If you're keen to take the next step with us and want us to be in touch, or if you are interested in profiling our team, or if you'd like to become a partner in the partner program and want to know more, and perhaps it's not really what you need, or you're not yet ready, then let us know. So please feel free to click on the option that applies to you as we wrap up this webinar. All right, well, thank you very much, everyone. It was really great to spend some time with you, and I hope this has been of value. Please keep your eyes open for our ongoing webinars. We have 2 a month where we focus on providing insight and value on particular aspects of working with teams and building teams, and really maximizing contribution in companies and in economies. So thank you very much. Have a wonderful day further, and hopefully to see you online soon at one of our future webinars. Cheers.